Good morning. I will call the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and Senate Committee on Finance Subcommittee on Human Services meeting to order. Committee Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Dondero Loop. Senator Hammond. Senator Keycapper. Senator Ratty. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblywoman Carlton.
Here.
Assemblyman Frierson. Assemblyman Roberts.
Here.
Assemblywoman Titus.
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles.
Here.
Assemblyman Watts.
Here.
Chair Monroe Moreno.
And I am here. Will you mark the members who are not present at this time, present as they enter? I know I have a few people making testimony on their bills and other committees and will be arriving a little later. For those who are joining us online, the building is open. Unfortunately, today we don't have anyone in the room with us, but the building is open on a limited basis. You can follow along with us online. We still have the virtual option available. We will have public comment at the end of today's meeting. We will be hearing a number of budget closings from the Governor's Office and the Department of Health and Human Services Aging and Disability Services Division. And with that, we will move to our first budget, which will be the Patient Protection Commission.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Kimber Ellsworth, Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. The Patient Protection Commission was created to systematically review issues related to healthcare needs of Nevada residents and the accessibility, affordability, and quality of healthcare in the state. The budget is funded with general fund appropriations. This was heard on March 5th. The governor's recommended budget includes the transfer of the Patient Protection Commission from the Office of the Governor's budget to the Aging and Disability Services Division as a new standalone budget. The duties of the Patient Protection Commission include examining the system for regulating healthcare, examining the cost of healthcare, reviewing the availability of providers and health benefits, researching possible policy changes and other duties to improve healthcare for all residents in the state. During the March 5th budget hearing, the Patient Protection Commission indicated that having access to more resources, including the patient advocacy services provided through the Aging and Disability Services Division, would benefit the work of the commission. The subcommittee alternatively discussed the possibility of placing the Patient Protection Commission within the office of the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, where the Office of Data Analytics is located, as opposed to the Division of Aging and Disability Services, to facilitate access to data, which could support the high-level review of healthcare needs in the state that the Commission is tasked with. Assembly Bill 348, which was referred to the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, would alternatively place the Patient Protection Commission within the office of the Director. The options for the subcommittee to consider are A, recommend approval of the governor's recommendation to transfer the Patient Protection Commission from the Office of the Governor to the Aging and Disability Services Division in a new standalone budget contingent upon enabling legislation. Or option B, to recommend approval of transferring the Patient Protection Commission from the Office of the Governor to the Office of the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services in a new standalone budget contingent upon enabling legislation.
Thank you so much. Members, do you have any questions or comment? Members will have a 1-minute recess. Thank you, committee, for your patience. We will come back to order. And we are still on the patient protection budget. On page 6, we've heard the recommendations from staff. Are there any comments or questions before I take a motion? All right, Senator Ratty?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I would recommend item B, approval of transferring the Patient Protection Commission from the Office of the Governor to the Office of the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services in a new standalone budget contingent upon enabling legislation.
Second? It's been moved by Senator Ratty and a second by Assemblywoman Carlton. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? Oh, comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. I'll support the motion. I certainly think the director's office is a much more appropriate place than Aging and Disability Services. I never really liked that. But just don't want it to be a commitment to vote for the bill that's referenced. Might have a couple other issues with that piece of legislation, but I think it's a much more natural home for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? Okay, we'll do it this again. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously of the members present. And we'll move on to the other closing items.
Thank you. Kimber Ellsworth, Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. The other closing item in this budget is a budget amendment. The Governor's Finance Office submitted Budget Amendment A2155230055 on March 19th, 2021, which recommends additional general fund appropriations of $794 in fiscal year 2022 and $1,160 in fiscal year 2023 to align operating costs of the commission with current cost projections. The recommended adjustments are shown on the first page of this closing document. Fiscal staff recommends the other closing item be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much.
So moved.
Moved by.
Second.
Moved in second. Any comments on the motion? On the closing items? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion moves unanimously with the members who are present. We'll move on to our next budget item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Federal Programs and Administration budget. This budget is the primary administrative budget for the Aging and Disability Services Division, providing general administration, centralized fiscal, human resources, and information technology services for the division. The budget is funded with general fund appropriations and cost allocation charged for services provided to other budgets within the division. There are no major closing issues in this budget. There are two other closing items. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 and 2 be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or comments on this budget item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
It's been second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries with members who are present. Moving on to our next budget item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Nevada Senior Prescription and Disability Prescription Program. These programs assist eligible senior citizens and persons with disabilities. The programs include an insurance premium subsidy, which helps recipients pay for Medicare Part D premiums, and a pharmacy subsidy, which helps pay for the Medicare Part D coverage gap or the donut hole. Funding is provided through transfers from the Trust Fund for a Healthy Nevada. The governor recommends eliminating the pharmacy subsidy portion of the programs in the upcoming biennium, which includes a reduction of $1.3 million in Healthy Nevada funds over the biennium. And this is due to the closure of the Medicare Part D coverage gap. The remaining funding in the budget would support the insurance premium portion of the programs. During the March 5th budget hearing, the agency indicated that the caseload had been declining. However, updated projections provided by the Office of Analytics in March 2021 reflect an increase in the caseload. The agency did indicate that it was not requesting to adjust the budget based on the increased caseload projections. The recommended funding in the budget, approximately $311,000 in each year of the upcoming biennium, would support monthly average combined caseload based on the average subsidy of $28.65. This is the most current average provided by the agency. A caseload of approximately 877 clients per month with the funding that would remain in the budget as recommended. Alternatively, to fund the reprojected monthly average caseload of approximately 1,054 clients in fiscal year 2022 and 1,253 clients in fiscal year 2023, fiscal staff calculates that additional Healthy Nevada funds of $62,374 would be required in fiscal year 2022 and $132,851 in fiscal year 2023 when compared to the approximately $311,000 as recommended by the governor. The program does serve as many members as funding will allow. The agency indicated that a waitlist would be generated if the budget is insufficient to meet a higher than budgeted caseload. Statute does preclude the Interim Finance Committee from augmenting the legislatively approved allocations from the Fund for a Healthy Nevada for the purposes of this program. As such, given the uncertainty of the caseload numbers in the upcoming biennium, the subcommittee may wish to consider recommending the budget as recommended by the governor or to recommend approval of funding based on the updated caseload projection data. The options for the subcommittee are on page 12 of your packet. Option A is to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation to reduce Healthy Nevada funds by $670,650 in each year of the upcoming biennium to eliminate the pharmacy subsidy portion of the programs and continue the insurance premium subsidy portion of the programs with Healthy Nevada funds of $311,328 in each year of the 2021 to 23 biennium, which would support a monthly average caseload of 877 clients in fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023 at the current average subsidy. Option B is to recommend approval of reducing Healthy Nevada funds by $608,276 in fiscal year 2022 and $537,799 in fiscal year 2023 to eliminate the pharmacy subsidy portion of the Senior RX and Disability RX programs and continue the insurance premium subsidy portion of the programs with Healthy Nevada funds of $373,702 in fiscal year 2022 and $444,179 in fiscal year 2023, which would support a monthly average caseload of 1,054 clients in fiscal year 2022 and 1,253 clients in fiscal year 2023, based on March 2021 caseload projections at the current average subsidy. The department has confirmed that sufficient Healthy Nevada funds are available to fund these increases.
Thank you so much. Members, any discussion on the pharmacy subsidy program elimination? Senator Reddy?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate staff working up both of the options on this one, and for me, it makes sense that if we have the funds, that we don't start to create a waiting list and that we make sure people get these services. So I will be supporting B.
Any other comments? All right. Seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
So I would make a motion to go with option B on page 12 of the packet as described by staff.
Thank you so much. A second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And can we go to the other closing items?
Thank you. There are no other closing items in this budget. Fiscal staff requests authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Do we need, do we need a motion for the technical adjustments? So I would,
Yes.
I would make the motion to request that fiscal staff can have the authority to make technical adjustments as necessary on the item we just approved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the Early Intervention Services budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Early Intervention Services works to identify infants and toddlers who have or are at risk for developmental delays. The program provides services and support for families with children under the age of 3 and helps facilitate the children's learning and individualized development in concert with the family. The budget is funded through general fund appropriations primarily and receives reimbursements from Medicaid and private insurance. There are 2 major closing issues in this budget. The first is caseload adjustments. The governor recommends additional funding to support projected caseload growth and staffing adjustments in the upcoming biennium. During the March budget hearing, we discussed the increase of 1 position based on the governor's recommended budgets. The agency provided March caseload updates, and based on that, the caseload is projected to increase by approximately 12% over the upcoming biennium. The updated caseload projections are lower for each fiscal year compared to the projections that were used in the executive budget. The table on page 15 compares the caseload as projected in the executive budget in November and the updated March projections and the difference at the bottom of the table. The updated projections results in a net reduction of 4 positions over the biennium, all of which are currently vacant. And this would align the staffing ratio to 1 caseworker position to every 19 clients. During the budget hearing, the state cost per child served was discussed, and the impact of the pandemic and the potential reduced costs due to reduced utilization during the pandemic. However, fiscal staff asked the agency to provide fiscal year 2021 year-to-date costs for comparison with the fiscal year 2020 costs per child. And the fiscal year 2021 costs were actually lower than the amounts that are used to build the budget. So the agency did indicate that the recommended funding, which is based on the fiscal year 2020 actual costs, would be adequate, assuming that the caseload is not significantly higher than as projected in March. The updated caseloads and staffing adjustments result in net costs of $525,178 over the biennium. This includes net general fund appropriations of $555,733. The table on page 16 compares the costs included in these decision units with from the governor's recommended budget and the March reprojection. The decision for the subcommittee is at the bottom of page 16. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of net funding reductions of $144,959, including $83,664 in general fund reductions in fiscal year 2022, and net additional funding of $670,137, including an increase in general funds of $639,397 in fiscal year 2023, for a net increase of $525,178 over the biennium, including general fund appropriations of $555,733 to align early intervention services caseload and staffing with the March 2021 projections.
Thank you so much. Senator Reddy?
Are you ready for a motion? Okay. Does, so I wish to recommend, wish to make the motion on the bottom of page 16 as described by staff.
A second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
Thank you. The next major closing issue is on page 17. This is a budget reduction measure. The governor recommends reducing the community provider rate from $565 to $500 per child per month in the upcoming biennium. This would be an 11.5% reduction in the rate paid to community providers. During the budget hearing, the agency discussed that the possible additional funds community providers have been able to collect based on additional revenue coming in from Medicaid reimbursements and private insurers. However, in response to follow-up questions, the agency did state that community providers have indicated rate reductions could impact access to care and service delivery. However, the agency indicated that the history of the program does not demonstrate a loss of providers following a rate reduction. Based on the caseload projection update, the costs savings included in decision units E698 and E699 are slightly higher than what was included in the executive budget. This would result in general fund savings of $2.9 million over the biennium. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 18. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation to reduce the early intervention services community provider rate from $565 to $500 per child per month in decision units E698 and E699 with the March 2021 updated caseload projections to realize general fund savings of $2.9 million over the biennium?
Thank you so much. Members, any discussion on this item? Senator Kieckhofer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't support this particular decision unit at this time. I believe that we heard that there was significant unallocated TANF funding that I believe could be used for this if we targeted towards low-income recipients of NEIS services. So I know that some of this stuff was still probably looking to balance out potentially down the road, but for this subcommittee meeting at this time, I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Benitez-Johnson.
Thank you so much. I just want to echo Senator Kieckhofer's concerns because I know he's been a longtime supporter of this. I know that he knows these services in a different level than just the legislative level and has a different appreciation for them. I don't think that this is all a decision we're making lightly, though. I just don't right now see any other great options other than to do this, but like him, remain hopeful that maybe if there's a chance to change the conversation, not only in this budget, but a lot of different budgets, that's what I'm hoping for as well. I know we've got another budget coming up where they're asking for 20 positions to meet caseload, and we're like, how about like 3.5 or 5, you know? So none of this is ideal, and I just want to recognize that because I absolutely get what he's saying.
Thank you so much for that. Speaker Frierson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo the sentiments of both my colleagues on this committee, but I can't stress enough how important it is that for decisions like this, we talk about the pain of cuts and we are not willing to talk about the revenue to pay for them. This session has about 33 days left, and I believe we can have a conversation about revenue to try to mitigate some of the painful cuts that we have. We fortunately also have the prospect of possible federal assistance. Without guidance currently, we can't depend on that, and we can't rely on the ability to use it to fill our state's needs until we know how to use it. But I can't talk about the pain of cuts without talking about the unwillingness to talk about revenue to pay for those cuts. So I'm hopeful that in the next 33 days, there's a willingness to talk about it because there are a lot of painful cuts that we have to talk about and consider And we all have some personal experiences and struggles with making these decisions, and they're not easy decisions. And I don't want to act like they are easy decisions. They're not. But you know, Nevada has always struggled with providing services like this in regular times, let alone during an economic downturn and a pandemic. It's high time that we talk about revenue to pay for them and meet our community's needs.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Tolles, did you still have a comment?
Thank you. I think we all have a similar sentiment here. This one is particularly difficult because having walked through this with some families, it ends up costing a lot more in the long run when we don't take advantage of these early intervention services, and has tremendous impact on a reliance on even greater services down the road if we don't intervene early. So I too will be voting no, and hope that we could prioritize restoring these quickly if it does pass.
Thank you. I think everyone on this committee shares the sentiments that's been expressed. The decisions that we're going to make today and in the next 33 days are going to be painful, but we have to do what's in the best interest, as looking at our limited budget as it is, until we're able to expand that budget. And some of these decisions we make are painful. And hopefully, when we do have those regulations that come down, we can put back some of the funds of the cuts that we are unfortunately having to make. So with that, I will call for the motion.
I would make a motion to recommend the approval of the governor's recommendation to reduce the early intervention services community provider rate from $565 to $500 per child per month in the E698 and E699 decision units with the March 2021 updated caseload projections to realize general fund savings of $2.9 million over the 21-23 biennium.
And a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Assemblywoman Carlton?
Thank you. And just one comment, like my friends here. This I've been through twice. And I hope none of you ever have to do it again. That sometimes you got to do what's put in front of you. And as I've said in other committee meetings, you've got to save the seeds of these programs so that when the money does come back in, we can grow them again. I have personally worked very hard since I've been on this committee since 2011 to grow mental health, to grow autism, to grow these programs. And to do this is painful. But that's what leadership is. And remembering it in the future so that when the time comes, you can fix it. Because I remembered it from 8, 9, and 10, and that's why when I came to this body in 11, I made it my goal to fix some of these things. And unfortunately, we've been put in this awful position, but I understand how all of you feel. So with that, Madam Chair, I will support it, but this is painful to do for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Keycaffer?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I certainly appreciate all of the comments of my colleagues, and I mean, in no way hope that my vote against this will be taken as casting an aspersion against the intent or heart or goal of all of my colleagues, because I know that they're committed to the children of our state. So this is just my pet budget, right? This is the one that I always pay attention to. So I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. And those that are opposed, would you raise your hand for the secretary? I have Assemblywoman Tolles, Assemblyman Roberts, Assemblywoman Titus, Senator Hammond, and Senator Keycaffer. And with that, the motion passes. Moving on to the other closing items in this budget.
Thank you. There are 3 other closing items in this budget. The third is a technical adjustment to add a vehicle back to the base budget that was not included in the governor's recommended budget. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 and 2 be closed as recommended by the governor, and other closing item 3 be closed with a noted technical adjustment, and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Senator Ratty?
Thank you. Make a motion to recommend other closing items 1 and 2 be closed as recommended by the governor, and other closing item 3 be closed with the noted technical adjustments, and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
A second? It's been moved by Senator Ratty, a second by Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Any discussion on the motion on the other closing items? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Moving on to our next budget.
Thank you. The next budget is the Autism Treatment Assistance Program. This program was created to assist parents and caregivers with the cost of providing autism-specific treatments to their child with autism spectrum disorder. The program provides temporary assistance to pay for evidence-based treatment, provides comprehensive behavior therapy, and also assists families with copays and deductibles, and provides case management support. Funding for this budget is provided through general fund appropriations, federal temporary assistance for needy families funds, and reimbursements from Medicaid and transfers from the trust fund for a healthy Nevada. There are 2 major closing issues in this budget. The first is caseload adjustments. The governor recommends additional funding to support projected caseload growth and eliminate the wait lists for the Autism Treatment Assistance Program and adjust associated staffing. During, the agency provided updated caseload projections in March, and based on that data, the monthly average caseload is projected to increase by approximately 30% over the upcoming biennium. The updated caseload projections are slightly lower for each fiscal year compared to the projections that were used in the executive budget. The table on page 23 compares the caseload projections from November and the updated projections provided in March 2021, and the difference from the governor's recommended budget. Included in this recommendation are staffing adjustments. Decision Unit M201, based on the updated caseload data, would result in a net reduction of 3 positions. And Decision Unit M203 would add 4 positions for a net increase of 1 position. And this is to align staffing with the caseload growth and add the waitlist to the caseload. The positions that are identified for elimination are vacant except for the 1 developmental specialist supervisor position and 1 caseworker position. To resolve this issue, the agency is requesting to move the caseworker incumbent from the position identified for elimination in M201 to one of the 4 positions being added in M203. And this would require adjusting the start date from October 1st to July 1st for 1 position to ensure continuation of service, which appears reasonable. And this would actually result in a net reduction of approximately $9,000 over the biennium by aligning the step of the new position with the incumbent's current step. Additionally, the agency is requesting to retain the supervisor position, as all 5 existing supervisor positions for this program are currently filled, and the agency indicates that these positions are difficult to fill. This would result in a temporary change in the supervisor caseworker ratio from the approved ratio of 1:7 to 1:6, which appears reasonable. If approved to retain the supervisor position and adjust the start date for the 1 caseworker position to retain the 2 incumbents, this would result in additional costs of $78,686 in fiscal year 2022 and $162,126 in fiscal year 2023, funded with general fund appropriations. During the March 5th budget hearing, the subcommittee discussed the waitlist for the ATAP program, and the agency indicated that this was in part due to a lack of program staffing, but Also that the autism provider capacity contributes to the wait list, and this declined during the pandemic with the moratorium on services. The updated caseload and staffing adjustments would result in net costs of $2.8 million over the biennium, which includes $2.7 million net general fund appropriations. And this is slightly lower compared to the amount recommended in the executive budget as shown in the table on page 24. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 24. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of funding totaling $1.2 million, including $1.2 million in general fund appropriations and $8,870 in federal funds in fiscal year 2022, and $1.6 million, including $1.6 million in general fund appropriations and $38,076 in federal funds in fiscal year 2023 to support caseload increases for the Autism Treatment Assistance Program, including associated staffing adjustments and elimination of the waitlists over the 2021 to 23 biennium in the M200, M201, and M203 decision units based on the March 2021 updated caseload projections and retaining the existing incumbents.
Thank you so much. Members, any discussion on this, the caseload adjustment in this budget? Seeing none, I'll ask for the motion.
I'd make a motion as described by staff on page 24 of the packet.
Thank you so much. Can I get a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously of the members present. Moving on to our next decision unit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next major closing issue is a funding reduction and revenue swap. The governor recommends reducing total revenue in this budget based on projected caseload and service costs for the upcoming biennium. The table on page 25 summarizes the funding included in the budget. And as shown in the table, part of the recommendation includes replacing Healthy Nevada funds of $5.7 million that were previously budgeted for autism services with temporary assistance for needy families funds. On page 26, there's a discussion about the Healthy Nevada funds. As I mentioned, these were in previous biennia, these were budgeted to support autism service costs. However, the recommendation for the upcoming biennium includes $143,500 in Healthy Nevada funds in each fiscal year to support administrative costs only. Given the intent of the Healthy Nevada Fund is to support programs, direct program costs, allocating money from the fund for administrative costs only with no related program expenditures supported by the Healthy Nevada funds does not appear to align with the intent of the fund or the provisions of statute. Fiscal staff recommends an adjustment to replace the Healthy Nevada funds with general fund appropriations of $143,500 per year in the upcoming biennium. Fiscal staff discussed this issue with the governor's finance office and the agency and both agreed with the recommended adjustments. Additionally, during the March 5th, 2021 budget hearing, the agency indicated that the recommended TANF funding in the budget would be from the state's TANF reserves, and that it was working to get clarification on the use of TANF funds for autism services. In follow-up, the agency provided a memo from the Office of the Attorney General, which reviewed the services that would be funded with TANF funds and determined that those services may be viewed as educational, given the focus on teaching and training rather than purely medical in nature, and therefore an allowable use of TANF funding. Also discussed during the budget hearing was the cost per child and the reduced utilization during the pandemic, which may have reduced the cost in fiscal year 2020, which is the cost that is used to build this budget. Fiscal staff asked the agency for updated fiscal year 2021 year-to-date costs, which were actually lower than the costs in fiscal year 2020. And in follow-up, the agency indicated that it does expect the recommended funding, which is based on the fiscal year 2020 actual costs, to be adequate. assuming that the actual caseload in the upcoming biennium is close to the projected levels and there are no significant changes to the provider rates in the upcoming biennium. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 26. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation to reduce total revenue and expenditures due to lower projected costs per child and to replace Healthy Nevada funds with federal temporary assistance for needy families funding of $5.7 million over the 2021 to 23 biennium to support autism service costs and to replace Healthy Nevada funds with general fund appropriations of $287,000 over the 2021 to 23 biennium to support administrative expenses.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or discussion on this closing issue? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
I would make the motion as described by staff on page 26.
Thank you so much. May I get a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to the other closing items.
Thank you. The other closing items are on page 27. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 and 2 be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Senator Reddy?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the other closing items? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll be moving on to our next budget.
The next budget is on page 29. This is the home and community-based services budget. This includes community-based care services such as the Community Options Program for the Elderly, or COPE, personal assistance services, homemaker, and home and community-based waiver programs for the frail elderly and physically disabled. This helps provide alternatives for individuals at risk of institutionalization. The budget also includes the long-term care ombudsman program and the adult protective services program. The budget is primarily funded with general fund appropriations and federal funds. There are 4 major closing issues in this budget. The first is caseload adjustments for the community-based care programs. The governor recommends additional funding in the upcoming biennium to adjust the caseloads for caseload growth and eliminate the wait lists for the personal assistance services, homemaker, and COPE programs. Based on the updated caseload projections provided in March 2021, the personal assistance services caseload is projected to increase by 19.8% over the biennium. The homemaker caseload is projected to increase by 3.6%, and the COPE caseload is projected to increase by 23.6% over the upcoming biennium. Compared to the projections that were used to prepare the recommendation in the executive budget, the updated caseload projections for the personal assistance services and COPE programs are lower, and the updated caseload projections for the homemaker programs are higher for each fiscal year in the upcoming biennium. The table on page 31 summarizes the caseload projections as included in the recommended budget and as included in the March 2021 update. As noted during the March 5th budget hearing, the supporting calculations for the waitlist decision units recommended by the governor for these programs in M203, M205, and M207 did not account for a portion of the caseload. So these were actually understated. The updated caseloads result in net costs of $376,676 over the 2021 to 23 biennium, which is slightly lower than the amounts included in the executive budget. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 32. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of general fund appropriations of $141,541 in fiscal year 2022 and $235,135 in fiscal year 2023 to support caseload adjustments, including elimination of the wait lists for the personal assistance services, homemaker, and community options programs for the elderly programs over the 2021-23 biennium, to align funding in the M200, M202, M203, M204, M205, M206, and M207 decision units with the March 2021 updated caseload projections.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or discussions on this closing item? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
Would make a motion to support the recommendation as described by staff on page 32.
A second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries of the members present. Moving on to our next major closing issue.
The next major closing issue is on page 32. This is staffing adjustments for the community-based care programs. The governor recommends in the executive budget general fund reductions. However, as discussed during the budget hearing, the caseload figures that were used to calculate the staffing needs in the executive budget did not account for the additional clients that were added to the caseload from the wait lists. The agency provided the updated staffing projections with the March caseload updates, and the table on page 33 compares the staffing recommendations in the March caseload update with the amount that was included in the governor's recommended budget and the amount discussed during the budget hearing as calculated by staff to include the clients that are on the wait list. So with the updated caseload projections, this would result in a net increase of 12 positions over the biennium. The revised staffing projections result in additional costs of $1.4 million over the 2021 to 23 biennium, which would be funded with general fund appropriations. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 33. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of general fund appropriations of $327,683 in fiscal year 2022 and $1.1 million in fiscal year 2023 to support caseload staffing adjustments for the community-based care programs over the 2021 to 23 biennium to align staffing and associated funding in decision unit M208 with the March 2021 updated caseload projections.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or discussions on this closing item? Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
I just have a quick question. It's just for my clarification. So I know that when we took the vote to use, if we could, and once we had the guidelines to prioritize funding the positions in many of these programs that were scheduled for elimination or that we were holding vacant, especially in 1 year of the budget versus the other year of the budget. So to really kind of help smooth that effect of not having to lay folks off and all of that. I don't see it specifically mentioned here, but I think these positions that we're talking about as well that we're holding vacant were in consideration for that. But I also know here that this, with caseload projections, this one was revised up in a net plus, but there's also still some scheduled elimination. So I wasn't sure where we came out in the wash. On page 33, I think is what I'm, 33, 35. Well, there's a lot of positions all over. 39. Oh, there it is. I believe Madam Chairwoman is pointing me to.
Would staff be able to assist us with answering the question, either Ms. Ellsworth or Mr. Weiser?
This is Kimber Ellsworth for the record. So I'm not quite sure if I understand the question. I know we have on page 33, with the March caseload update, we have the net change with a total of 12 positions, and there's a reduction of 3 intake positions. And I wasn't sure if the question was whether or not those are vacant. If that's the case, then yes, they are vacant. There would not be any associated layoffs with this.
And I just wanted to say I appreciate that because the chairwoman said, read ahead. And that's wonderful because I'm appreciating so much more that vote we took a couple weeks ago, because otherwise I would be asking that on literally every single budget. So now that we kind of put it in there, the boilerplate, I can make sure I remind myself where to find it. Thank you so much.
This is Brody Lizer for the record, Fiscal Analysis Division. I think so we're all on the same page. On page 39 of the closing document here, I believe what the majority leader was asking about was the E600 or E680 decision unit that had held 21 positions vacant through fiscal year 2022, and in which the full money committees took action on April 1st to restore those positions preliminarily restore those positions through American Rescue Plan Act funding effective October 1st. And I believe that the decisions or the positions that we're talking about currently are unrelated to that prior decision, if that helps clarify. Yeah, I believe that the decisions are independent of each other. And if I'm incorrect, Ms. Ellsworth will correct me.
You're correct.
Thank you so much for the question and the clarification. Senator Keffer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to summarize, the intent was to incorporate all of the wait list into caseload, and we just didn't adequately budget for staff to do so. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so it's 2 million above GovRec to adequately staff the caseload.
Yes,
Thank you.
with the wait list.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion on this closing item, I will call for the motion.
So I would make the motion to recommend the approval as described on the bottom of page 33.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded to go with fiscal staff's recommendation as described in the box at the bottom of our page 33. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
Thank you. The next major closing issue is on page 34. This is staffing adjustments for the long-term care ombudsman program. The governor recommends reducing funding to adjust the long-term care ombudsman program staffing based on projected changes in caseload. With the updated March 2021 caseload projections, the caseload is projected to increase by 41.3%, which with an average monthly clients of 922 in fiscal year 2023. The updated caseload projections are higher for each fiscal year in the upcoming biennium compared to those recommended in the executive budget. The adjustments would result in a net reduction of 4 positions over the biennium. The revised staffing projections result in reduced costs of $671,141 over the biennium. During the March 5th, 2021 budget hearing, the agency indicated that the overall program activities dropped due to the pandemic and the closure of long-term care facilities to visitors, and that it was concerned about the ability for long-term care ombudsman program staff to maintain minimal visits with the recommended staffing reductions. In response to follow-up questions, the agency indicated that it does anticipate a dramatic increase in the number of cases and referrals to the program as facilities reopen. However, it is unclear if the actual caseload would exceed the monthly average of 922 clients as projected by data analytics in the upcoming biennium. The table on page 35 compares the recommended staffing changes as included in the executive budget and those revised based on the March caseload update. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 35. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation to reduce general funds by $305,193 in fiscal year 2022 and $365,948 in fiscal year 2023 to eliminate 6 vacant positions and add 2 new positions for a net change of 4 positions, to align staffing and associated funding in Decision Unit M209 with the March 2021 updated caseload projections prepared by the Office of Analytics for the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or discussions? Senator Assemblywoman Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just, I guess, a point of clarification. Projection, they just don't know the amount of caseload at this point in time. As these long-term care units open back up, they were saying perhaps there's going to be a need, but there's nothing in this decision that would prevent them from, once they see that, if they needed to adjust, they could certainly adjust at some other time. I'm just anxious about eliminating these positions versus holding them vacant. And so if we make this decision, it's a little bit more of a process to come back and fill them if needed. So I was just curious about their ability to adjust as they see fit in the future. The question is, again, how flexible will they be in case they do see a huge surge once they do open up? And I know that a lot of these long-term cares are starting to open up now. So I'm just curious to see how would they be able to adjust and how quick would they be able to adjust if there's a surge in need?
Well, adding positions does take some time, as I'm sure you probably know, but if the agency is able to identify funding during the interim, they could bring the request to add positions to the interim finance committee. But I believe in order for the Division of Human Resources Management to approve the addition of positions, they have to identify the funding to support them.
Thank you. I appreciate the question, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or discussions on this closing item? All right, seeing none, I will call for the motion.
Making a motion to do the recommendation as described by staff on page 35.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. We have one in opposition. That would be Assemblywoman Titus, for the record. Motion passes. Moving on to our next closing item.
The next closing item is on page 35. This is Adult Protective Services Program staffing adjustments and funding source changes. The governor recommends additional general fund appropriations of $1.7 million over the upcoming biennium to adjust Adult Protective Services Program staffing based on caseload projections and changing the funding source of 9 existing program positions. The March caseload update includes an increase of 14.8% in the caseload over the upcoming biennium, compared to an increase of 6.1% in the caseload that was used for the executive budget. The agency's current staffing levels support a ratio of 1 caseworker to every 48 clients, and the staffing adjustments would support a ratio of 1 caseworker to every 40 clients, which has been historically used for the program. As recommended in the executive budget, this would add 9 social workers based on the November 2020 projections to align the staffing ratios. The updated caseload projections provided in March would result in the addition of 29 positions over the biennium, and this includes 22 social workers. This would result in increased costs of $4.4 million over the biennium, which is $2.8 million more than the amount recommended in the executive budget. The agency indicated in follow-up that if the additional social worker positions are not added, the additional 22 with the March caseload reprojection, and if the caseload growth is actually realized, then the program may have difficulty in meeting the statutory requirement of investigating reports that the division receives within the timeframes that are required. However, during the budget hearing, the agency discussed the difficulty of recruiting for these positions and indicated a vacancy rate of approximately 51% for social worker and adult rights specialist positions. Therefore, the likelihood of filling all 22 additional social worker positions in the upcoming biennium is uncertain. Additionally, the budget, as included in the executive budget, included Federal Victims of Crime Act grant funds. During the March 5th budget hearing, the agency indicated that the federal VOCA funding had been limited and that alternative federal funding may become available in the future to support adult protective services. However, no immediate funding has been identified to add to the budget. The Governor's Finance Office submitted a budget amendment on April 22nd, 2021, which eliminates all remaining VOCA funding from the budget and 3 vacant positions due to a further reduction in the VOCA funding for the program. The budget amendment changes Decision Unit E491 and Decision Unit E227. The net effect of the adjustments is the elimination of $518,514 in funding over the biennium, including a net reduction of $68,514 in general fund appropriations, and the elimination of 3 associated vacant positions. The amendment also changes the funding source for the 6 remaining positions from federal VOCA grant funds to general fund appropriations. The table on page 38 summarizes the adjustments and compares the caseload staffing changes as recommended by the governor in Decision Unit M210 and the revised staffing changes based on the March 2021 caseload projections and the adjustments included in the budget amendment. So as you can see with the, as recommended by the governor, with the budget amendment, the net change would be an addition of 6 new positions. Considering the caseload increase is speculative and the high vacancy rates experienced by the agency, the subcommittee may wish to consider maintaining the caseload staffing adjustments as recommended in the executive budget and as submitted in the budget amendment for a net increase of 6 positions and associated net costs of $1.1 million, which includes general fund appropriations of $1.6 million over the upcoming biennium. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 38. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation to support caseload staffing adjustments for the Adult Protective Services Program based on the caseload projections utilized in the executive budget in Decision Unit M210 for the addition of 9 social worker positions and decision units E491 and E227 as amended by budget amendment A216453266 to eliminate 3 vacant positions and associated funding and change the funding source for 6 existing positions from federal grant funds to general fund appropriations for a net increase of $1.1 million, including $1.6 million in general funds over the 2021 to 23 biennium for a net increase of 6 positions.
Thank you. Members, any questions or discussion on this closing item? Senator Reddy?
So, thank you for the opportunity, Chair. I think this is just going to be one of those days where we all have our thing, and I just want to flag this one. I'm going to support, probably support the motion, but I think just this one is just the perfect storm. Obviously, we're losing the VOCA funding, so that puts more weight on the general fund, which is challenging. And then it's a brand-new program, and so doing caseload projections is difficult. I wouldn't go so far as describe them as speculative, but I would say that they are challenging to do at this point because we just don't have a lot of history. And so then we have those caseload projections, and we need 29 positions. And so my concern is the testimony in the hearing was that it has been difficult to fill these social worker positions, and I believe that that could possibly be because the caseload is out of proportion. And I'm just a little bit concerned that we're going to create this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy of it's difficult to hire people because the caseloads are so high that folks, the word gets out that this is not the agency that you want to work for because of the challenges. So I don't think, as we've discussed earlier today, that there's much that we can do about it today. And I'm prepared to support the recommendation that's in our packet. However, if the caseload actually does come in the way that it's been projected, I think that this situation will be untenable for the staff that is going to be working in this office. And I would just ask that we flag it, and as we look for federal funding or any other solutions, that this is one that we pay attention to.
Thank you for the comments. Any other discussion on this closing item? All right, seeing none, I would call for the motion.
So I would make the recommendation to approve the governor's rec to support the caseload adjustments as described on page 38 with the budget amendment.
May I get a second on the motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously of the members present. Moving on to the other closing items in this budget.
Thank you. The other closing items are on page 39. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 3 be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
So
I'll
moved.
entertain a motion. Thank you. A second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries with the members who are present. Moving on to our next budget.
Excuse me. The next closing document on page 41 is the consolidated document for the Developmental Services Regional Centers budgets. Developmental services include an array of services provided to people of all ages with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities and their families through the 3 regional centers. Decision units that are specific to an individual budget are discussed in the closing document for that respective budget. The 3 major closing issues in this document consolidate the issues for the 3 regional centers. And the first shared issue is federal medical assistance percentage or FMAP rate adjustments and base revenue adjustments. Based on discussions at the April 15th, 2021 work session for the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy on FMAP rates, the subcommittee may wish to consider approving adjusting the FMAP rates in the regional centers budgets to align with the rates used in the Medicaid budget. During the work session, the joint subcommittee expressed a desire to budget the temporary 6.2% enhanced FMAP rate through the end of the calendar year 2021. Additionally, the fiscal year 2023 projected FMAP rate has decreased since the budget submissions. Fiscal staff calculates net increases in federal Title 19 Medicaid revenue of $6.4 million in fiscal year 2022 and $1.6 million in fiscal year 2023, based on the adjustments to the FMAP rates in the base budgets for the Desert Regional Center, the Rural Regional Center, and the Sierra Regional Center budgets. And this would result in corresponding reductions in general fund appropriations, net reductions of $8 million over the biennium to align federal Title 19 Medicaid revenue and general fund appropriations with the applicable FMAP rates for the upcoming biennium. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 42. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of adjusting revenues in the base budgets for the 3 regional centers budgets to correct the inadvertent miscalculations included in the base budgets, to update FMAP rates to reflect the most recent projections, and to budget for the temporary 6.2 percentage point increase in the FMAP rates through December 31st, 2021 for net general fund savings of $8 million over the 2021 to 23 biennium.
Thank you so much. Members, Senator Keycover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to understand a little bit in the closing document. So it indicates that there's a disagreement between GFO regarding the FMAP rates. As you indicated, we'd previously approved utilizing the enhanced FMAP based on the public health emergency through the end of the calendar year. So does the $8 million referenced in the decision unit include that decision that was made in the Medicaid budgets?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
I would make the recommendation as described by staff on page 42.
And get a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Assemblywoman Carlton?
And thank you, Madam Chair. And if the committee would remember, we had a work session on that particular item where there seems to be a little bit of a difference of opinion, and we had the letter at the back stating where we thought we might be going with this. There are provisions, there are safeguards and safety valves built into this to make sure that we're in good shape, but I believe the committee was very comfortable with going through the end of this calendar year to 2021, but after that, would have loved to added more money to it by extending it even further, but we kind of picked the middle choice to go down the road and move forward from there. But there are off-ramps on this thing just in case we need it. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Keycover.
Yeah, thank you. I had forgotten that was a work session and not a closing, but I was just so happy that we were all on the same page that it felt like a closing. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries of the members who are present. Moving on to our next closing issue.
The next major closing issue is on page 43. This is caseload adjustments. The governor recommends additional funding to support caseload growth, reduce the waiver waitlist, and adjust associated staffing for the supported living arrangements, family support, respite, and jobs and day training programs at the Desert Regional Center, Sierra Regional Center, and Rural Regional Center. The table on page 44 compares the caseload projections that were used in the executive budget and the projections provided by the agency calculated in March 2021. Compared to the projections that were used to prepare the recommendation in the executive budget, the monthly average regional centers caseload projections are lower, and the waiver wait list projections are higher for each fiscal year in the upcoming biennium. The updated caseloads and waiver wait lists result in total funding of $75.6 million in the upcoming biennium compared to $70.9 million in the governor's recommended budget. And this includes $37.4 million general fund appropriations over the upcoming biennium. The table on page 46 compares the developmental services estimated monthly average service count by type as recommended in the executive budget and based on the March 2021 caseload projections. Included in this recommendation, the discussion is on page 47, are staffing adjustments. Based on the updated caseload projections, the staffing adjustments would include the addition of 18 positions at the Desert Regional Center. No adjustments would be required at the Sierra Regional Center or at the Rural Regional Center. As noted during the budget hearing, the recommended staffing adjustments for the Desert Regional Center include 4 human resource positions that are not directly tied to the caseload growth in the upcoming biennium. During the budget hearing, the agency indicated that the Desert Regional Center currently has no human resource positions to support the operations of the facility, and that the growth in caseloads and caseload staffing over time have necessitated the additional support for human resource personnel. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 47. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of $34.1 million, including $16.4 million general fund appropriations in fiscal year 2022, and $41.5 million, including $21 million in general fund appropriations in fiscal year 2023, to support caseload increases for the developmental services programs over the 2021 to 23 biennium, including associated staffing adjustments to align funding in the M200, M201, and M510 decision units with the March 2021 updated caseload projections, with authority for technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or discussions on this closing item? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
I make a motion to approve the recommendation as described by staff on page 47.
Is that with the authority for technical adjustments?
Always with the authority for technical adjustments.
Thank you. Can I get a second on the motion? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously of the members who are present. Moving on to our next major issue in this budget.
Thank you. The next major issue begins on page 47. This is a budget reduction measure for the Fiscal Intermediary program. The governor recommends reducing the monthly financial assistance paid to families from $450 to $300 per month in fiscal year 2022 to realize general fund savings of $466,200 in the first year of the upcoming biennium. The Fiscal Intermediary program provides aid to low-income families with children under the age of 18 to purchase specialized treatment and services to assist the child in successful integration into their community. During the March 18th budget hearing, the agency explained that the families that qualify for the Fiscal Intermediary program are at or below the 300% poverty level, and that the recommended reduction would impact the amount of specialized services they are able to purchase. However, the agency indicated that its service coordinators would work with the families to assist them with finding lower cost or free resources to help supplement their needs. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 48. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation to reduce the fiscal intermediary program rate paid to families from $450 to $300 per month to realize general fund savings of $466,200 in fiscal year 2022, with authority for technical adjustments as necessary?
Thank you. Members, any questions or discussions on this closing it? Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
This will be inarticulate, but I mean, just blah, right? This is one where I look at it and I'm like, they're at 300% of federal poverty level. I know we don't have the money to do anything about this, but I know the caseworkers are going to work with them to help find lower cost or free resources. If they really existed, they would be getting them now. So I just, this is, I know that this was, the agency was really thoughtful in where they were trying to do cuts. I know that they're trying to do the least amount of harm, right? So they identified this program because it would affect, in a quantified way, the least amount of people, but that impact to those people is so big. So I just, just had to say that.
Thank you so much for another area that's heartbreaking, a decision that we have to make. Members, any other questions or discussions? Seeing none, I will call for the motion.
I would make a motion to recommend the approval of the governor's recommendation on page 48 as described by staff.
We have a motion. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair. And I just want to echo what the majority leader said, and I know Mr. Leiser has a whole bunch of little blue stickies. Mr. Leiser, we need a blue sticky on this one. Majority leader didn't want to put it quite as bluntly as I will, but since I'm a short timer in this building, I'm just going to say it out loud. This sucks. Okay? These are kids that need help. And we know there are better days ahead, and this is one of our priorities I think we're all going to watch for in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I think we could all be in agreement that this does suck. So, members, I will call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries of the members who are present. Moving on to our next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is on page 51. This is the Family Preservation Program. This program serves clients in all 3 regional centers. It provides monthly cash assistance to low-income families who care for relatives in their homes who have a profound or severe intellectual or developmental disability or have children under 6 years of age who have developmental delays that require equivalent levels of support. The program aims to strengthen and support families so that they may remain intact and limit or avoid the need for institutional placement. The budget is funded with general fund appropriations, federal temporary assistance for needy families, and transfers from the Trust Fund for a Healthy Nevada. The governor recommends additional general fund appropriations to support projected increases in the Family Preservation Program. With the March caseload update, the caseload is projected to increase by 3.7% over the upcoming biennium. Compared to the projections used in the executive budget, these are slightly lower for each fiscal year. The tables on page 53 compare the caseload and the funding in the associated decision units as recommended in the executive budget and as with the March 2021 caseload projections. The updated caseloads result in total additional general fund appropriations of $127,534 over the 2021-23 biennium, which is approximately $49,000 less compared to the amount recommended in the executive budget. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of general funds of $37,400 in fiscal year 2022 and $90,134 in fiscal year 2023 to support caseload growth for the Family Preservation Program over the 2021-23 biennium, to provide financial assistance of $374 per family per month to align funding in the M200 and M201 decision units with the March 2021 updated caseload projections. As there are no other closing items in this budget, I would also like to add to the motion that fiscal staff request authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Members, any discussions or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
I would make a motion to recommend the approval of the recommendation as stated by staff and on page 53 to include technical adjustments as necessary.
Any second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries for the members who are present. We'll be moving on to our next budget.
Thank you. The next budget is on page 55. This is the Rural Regional Center. This is one of the 3 regional centers that provide services for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities and related conditions. It serves individuals in rural northern Nevada. The budget is primarily funded with general fund appropriations and federal Medicaid funds. The major closing issues in this budget were discussed in the regional center's overview closing document. The other closing items are listed on page 56. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 3 be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or discussions? All right, seeing none, I will call for the motion.
So moved.
It's been moved. Second. And seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries of the members who are present. Moving on to our next budget item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget begins on page 57. This is the Desert Regional Center. This regional center serves clients residing in Southern Nevada, including urban Clark County. The first 3 major closing issues in this budget were discussed previously. The 4th major closing issue is the continuation of dental services on page 58 of your closing packet. The governor recommends additional general fund appropriations of $200,000 in each year of the upcoming biennium to continue providing dental services to Desert Regional Center clients through the University of Nevada, Las Vegas School of Dental Medicine. The agency indicates the recommendation would help reduce delays for dental care. And during the March 18th budget hearing, the agency explained that the UNLV School of Dental Medicine has a specialized clinic with a sensory-specific room that helps to serve individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Through this partnership, the agency explained that it benefits from providing access to specialized dental services to clients who might otherwise not have access to dental services, and that the School of Dental Medicine benefits from the experience gained by working with these clients. The decision for the subcommittee is on page 59. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommendation to appropriate general funds of $200,000 in each year of the 2021-23 biennium to continue the provision of dental services to Desert Regional Center clients through the UNLV School of Dental Medicine?
Thank you. Members, any questions or discussions on this closing item? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
I make a motion to accept the recommendation as described by staff on page 59.
Thank you so much. Any second on the motion? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries with the members who are present. Moving on to our other closing items in this budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other closing items are on page 59. There are 7 other closing items. The 7th includes a pilot program and the subsequent elimination of the pilot program. During the March 18th budget hearing, the agency confirmed that these decision units were included as an error in the executive budget, and that it is appropriate to remove these from the budget recommendation. The governor's finance office agreed. Fiscal staff recommends technical adjustments to zero out these decision units. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 6 be closed as recommended by the governor, and other closing item 7 be closed with noted technical adjustments, and requests authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or discussions on the other closing items? Seeing none, I will call for a motion.
So moved?
It's been the motion by Assembly Senator Ratty. Second. And seconded by Assemblywoman Carlton. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any nays? Motion carries unanimously of the members who are present. Moving on to our next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is on page 61. This is the Sierra Regional Center. This regional center provides services to clients residing in Washoe County. The major closing issues for this budget were covered previously. The other closing items are on page 62. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 4 be closed as recommended by the governor, and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions or discussions on this closing item? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Senator Ratty. Second. Seconded by Assemblywoman Carlton. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously of the members who are present. Moving on to our next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will now begin presenting the budgets which the subcommittee has not previously reviewed for the Aging and Disability Services Division, and for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations. I will pause following my presentation of each budget to allow for questions. When I have presented the last budget in this group and questions have been addressed, the chair may wish to ask for a single motion for closing consideration on all of the budgets for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing recommendations. On page 63, we have the Commission for Persons Who Are Deaf. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget. The committee has not previously reviewed this budget. The Nevada Commission for Persons Who Are Deaf, Hard of Hearing, or Speech Impaired provides such persons with information and referrals for services and resources that promote equality in education, employment, and socialization. The Commission's 11 members are appointed by the governor. The budget is funded with general fund appropriations and provides for administrative expenses of the Commission. There are no major closing issues and there are no other closing items. The closing recommendations for this budget are included on the summary page in the closing packet.
Thank you. Members, any questions before we move on? Okay, moving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Tobacco Settlement Program. This is on page 65. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing the closing recommendations for this budget. The committee has not previously reviewed this budget. The Aging and Disability Services Division supports grants for existing or new programs that assist senior citizens and other specified persons with independent living. Funds are received through the Fund for a Healthy Nevada. The independent living grants enable older persons to remain at home and avoid institutionalization. The services provided include transportation, information assistance, and advocacy, adult daycare, legal assistance, homemaker, companion, respite, home repair, and caregiver support services. There are no major closing issues and there are no other closing items in this budget. The closing recommendations for this budget are included in the summary page in the closing packet.
Thank you. Members, any questions on this budget? Seeing none, moving on.
Thank you. The next budget is on page 67. This is Communication Access Services. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget. The committee has not previously reviewed this budget. Communication Access Services provide communication access to Nevadans who are deaf, hard of hearing, or speech impaired. The programs include Relay Nevada that provides access to phone services, Communication Access Service Centers, and Communication Access Real-Time Registry that provides information about registered interpreters and providers in the state. The budget is funded through a monthly surcharge on phone lines in the state. There are no major closing issues in this budget. There are 4 other closing items, all of which appear reasonable. The closing recommendations for this budget are included on the summary page in the closing packet.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments on this budget before we move on? Seeing none, we can go on to the next budget.
Thank you. The last budget is on page 69. This is the Applied Behavior Analysis budget. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing the closing recommendations. The committee has not previously reviewed this budget. The 2017 legislature transferred the regulation of applied behavior analysis to the new Board of Applied Behavior Analysis. And the budget includes the operating costs of the board, which consists of 5 members and is funded with fees for the licensure of licensed behavior analysts and licensed assistant behavior analysts, as well as the registration of registered behavior technicians. There are no major closing issues, and there are no other closing items in this budget. The closing recommendations for this budget are included on the summary page in this closing packet.
Thank you so much. Members, do you have any questions or comments before we move on to finishing up these fiscal staff closings? All right. See no comments? You can go on.
Okay, thank you. So on page 71, we have the summary for the staff closed budgets. As previously noted, fiscal staff is responsible for developing recommendations for the following budgets. To assist with the closing, fiscal staff has identified the budgets that are recommended to be closed as recommended by the governor below. Fiscal staff recommends that the following budgets be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. Budget 1006, Commission for Persons Who Are Deaf. Budget 3140, Tobacco Settlement Program. Budget 3206, Communication Access Services. And Budget 3207, Applied Behavior Analysis.
Thank you so much. Members, I will entertain a motion to close the budgets as recommended and indicated by staff, and giving our staff authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously of the members who are present. I thank you so much. Members, that brings us up to the very last item on our agenda, which will be public comment. And I will ask our broadcast staff if we have anyone in the queue wishing to make public comment on any of the items that we have discussed here today or anything that's before Ways and Means.
If you would like to make public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 044, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, esteemed chair and members. My name is Dr. Tiffany Tyler Garner, Tiffany, Tyler, Garner, and I'm calling in to, 1, thank you for your thoughtful consideration during such a challenging fiscal time, and to 2, underscore the importance and value of early intervention services. These are trajectory-changing services for children and their families. And while I recognize that you all face many tough decisions, just want to underscore if some consideration can be given to ensuring this vital support for children and families, that you please do so, particularly recognizing the impact of being able to intervene early and support children to success, whether it's the ways in which it impacts school readiness or the K-12 engagement, or even throughout the lifespan. These services are critical services for children and families. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for joining us and staying engaged with the process. Next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 177. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Lisa Foster, LISA-FOSTER, representing SNAP, the State of Nevada Association of Providers. In partnership with the state, SNAP's members provide direct services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. These include supported living arrangements, jobs and day training services, and other supports to help those they serve. SNAP members represent approximately 80% of these direct providers throughout the state. We are exceptionally appreciative of our relationship with ADSD leaders and acknowledge their understanding of the great problems facing these providers right now. I'm speaking in support of all the regional centers' efforts and their budgets, but are always watching and concerned with any cut. However, we'd like to make the committee aware of a few things, maybe just for reference, as the state will soon begin to allocate the rescue plan and infrastructure dollars. As you know, Medicaid match dollars are 100% of what funds most all these direct service providers for the state. So as the state pays out $1, the federal government pays out approximately $2 to take care of intellectually disabled persons. It's our understanding there may be a 10% increase in these match funds, the FMAP dollars coming in the rescue plan, and there is money specifically dedicated in the plan to serve those with intellectual disabilities. Disability providers are more burdened than ever when it comes to hiring and maintaining those who care for the vulnerable individuals they serve. Not only are they concerned they will not be able to meet the demands of the minimum wage increase, which they wholeheartedly support, but they currently have struggled worse than any other time to hire and keep employees because of the low wages they must pay due to the lower rate. The year-long dollars of the rescue plan will allow them to get past this crisis. SNAP is asking that the state carry out this plan to dedicate any federal dollars to those with intellectual disabilities when that time comes. Thank you for allowing me to speak for this and for your great work and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us and for your comments today. Next caller.
Chair, the public comment line is open and working. However, we have no more callers at this time.
Thank you so much. So with that, members, before we end, I'd like to thank those that were able to call in and share your comments with this committee. Please know that we are listening and we hear you. To our fiscal staff, you are amazing. There are no words of thanks that I can say to you all for this very depressing budget that we had to go through today. Thank you for the work that you do and the long hours that you're putting in. And committee, with that, our meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful day.